I think so, yes.
Yes.
I agree.
Well, Reverend Soni, shall we dance?
It depends on how you dance and who's going to lead. Uh-huh.
Yes. So this month we are kicking off a new theme centered around the idea of play. So how many of you may have the tendency to, in moments, take life a little too seriously? Right? It's easy to get caught up in the circumstances of the world, and especially right now.
Oh, yeah.
Understandably, there's so much conflict in the world amidst war and the pandemic. Yet I want to present the idea of what would it be like to embrace joy as an act of resistance, to demonstrate to those who seek to oppress the strength and the resilience of our shared humanity by expressing joy through music, through dance, through play. You know, it's curious how oppressive regimes seek to control by stripping away parts of our humanity through access to music, banning certain music, dance, these things that make us feel alive. Author Ingrid Fattel-Lee explains joy is an act of resistance because it counters and contrasts with the rigidity and the control of oppressive structures in a non-violent way. She goes on to say that none of us want to be the rich people on the Titanic, sipping champagne in a black tie while watching the waters rise, but there is good reason to fear complacency because joy is a fundamentally different thing than turning a blind eye. So this is the kind of the nuance I want us to get today. And if you're curious about this idea of joy as an act of resistance, I invite you to look up the works of Audre Lorde and Andrea Marie Brown, and I'll post some links and other resources for you. So I want you to consider what would it be like to embrace play throughout your day as a spiritual practice and as an expression of life and an expression of freedom. Spirit has created all with an overflowing capacity of joy, of balance, of freedom. And yet our human tendency is to get caught up in the busyness of the world and such that we forget to engage with these essential aspects of our divine selves. So play is a sacred activity, and it is absolutely necessary for the complete expression in this life. Play connects us with a sense of wonder and creativity, and play is healing for the body, mind, and heart, as it connects us with others and inspires us to be our greater yet to be. And as they say, laughter is the best medicine, right? Mm-hmm. So connecting deeply with the divine, sometimes we can think of this as like serious, heavy work. I got to go do my spiritual practice, I'm going to sit in silence and meditate and pray and contemplate. And we can act like a very serious spiritual person, yet what would it be like to embrace the joy and the spontaneity of spirit and the divine through us as a spiritual practice, calling us to celebrate all, the serious and the silly? Really think about that. What would it be like to celebrate, to honor, to acknowledge all that's occurring in the world, in our life, the serious and the silly? In the Science of Mind Declaration of Principles, Dr. Ernest Holmes wrote, "We believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete freedom from all discord of any nature, and that this goal is surely attained by all." So as we recognize that we are playing with the divine, this energy, at all times, we can connect to those qualities of freedom and joy that flow naturally from us through this deep connection with the universe, with all that there is, within us and around us, and begin to release the need to struggle and begin to see things from a different perspective. You know, when you find yourself really taking something very seriously, what would it be like to just consider another perspective? So let's open to this idea of spirit and spiritual practice as not just being some proper, serious adult thing that we do, but rather that spirit and this energy of creativity and love and joy and play is all that there is and is expressing through all. In the Holmes paper, Dr. Ernest Holmes wrote, "God sings all the songs, dances all the dances, paints all the pictures, and creates all the art. Every book plays every game." Writes every book and plays every game. So I know for me, you know, when I'm in that flow state of creativity, it's like allowing that divine presence to move through me, whether it be through dancing or singing or writing or drawing. This energy, these moments, they resemble the same feeling state as when I am in deep contemplation or meditation. So I invite you to take a moment now and just reflect for yourself and notice, how do you view your spiritual life? Is it something that you've compartmentalized over here? And is it something that you look at as serious or playful or both? You know, I think it's pretty obvious that Reverend Soni and I both have a core value of play and joy. It's natural to who we are. And there are moments of very serious work and often heartbreaking struggles in ministry.
Oh boy, you think?
Yeah. So our goal is to embrace spirituality as a both and instead of an either or.
Exactly, yeah. You know, I was thinking about, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that I love, and maybe some of you also, I love to color. I like to
Yes.
get a kid's coloring book and just sit down and color, and I can get lost in that. And that's a lot of fun for me, and it's also very meditative. So I'm having fun and I'm meditating at the same time, basically. You know, I was reading an article in the LA Times, I don't know, this is about 2 or 3 weeks ago, about an increase in carjacking and joyrides. As people began to come out of their homes from the pandemic, it seems to be something that is being picked up again. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking about joyrides, and you know, what would it be like to take a joyride with Spirit? You know, and for those of you who don't know the term joyride, it's to drive around in a vehicle, to steal a vehicle, really, with no particular goal. Right? A ride taken solely for pleasure. A joyride almost always ends with the vehicle being returned to the owner unharmed, in most cases, and abandoned for lack of fuel, or reported as stolen, right? So this really led me to that idea of what it would be like to really look at joy as a deep embodiment of Spirit. You know, in Psalms 100, we read, "Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands." Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before this presence with singing. You know, you can use whatever word you want to use in there for Lord, Spirit, or the divine. But make a joyful noise unto the divine and serve it with gladness. So what this means for me is that you come to Spirit with joy in your heart, for you have a desire to have a meaningful relationship, not to just go through the motions of seeking Spirit only when you want something or when you're troubled, right? I mean, let's face it, the truth is that's when we turn to Spirit the most, is when something's going on in our lives that we don't want to go on in our lives. So it means to not only pray when you're suffering, but to come to Spirit with a glad heart, with grace, with joy and gratitude in your heart. And, you know, the thing is joy, the word joy vibrates throughout many, many sacred writings as a profound, compelling quality of life that can transcend the events and disasters that anybody may be feeling in their life. Real joy is a divine dimension of living that is not defined by our circumstances and our conditions. You know, by the way, the most common word in Hebrew for joy is simcha, which is loosely translated as gladness, to be glad. You know, and another is hedva, which is translated as it is God's joy. Think about that. It is God's joy. So it is this joy that makes us glad, that strengthens us, and we find our joy and our strength in Spirit. So, you know, true joy from within, true joy that we embody is not an emotional state.
Right.
It's a spiritual state. That was a revelation for me. It's a spiritual state. Without joy, somewhat like the reading that Lauren did earlier, you know, everything in our lives slows down. I mean, did you ever notice that when we're unhappy or we've lost our joy temporarily, that our lives simply slow down? We trudge through the day, you know, oh man, what do I have to do today? Right? Our energy is zapped. We don't have any energy. It's just like that car that runs out of gas. But when we have joy in our hearts, life speeds up. And, you know, I love this phrase, wow, where'd the time go?
Yeah.
Right? Wow.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you embody joy.
Yes.
Right? So we have plenty of energy to do the things that we want to do or the things that make us happy. And the other thing I think about when I think about joy is enthusiasm. And I think enthusiasm is based on joy, that we can't find joy or any happiness in our work or our relationships or in our lives without enthusiasm kicking it off. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes when I'm, you know, like trudging through life, right, I can practice enthusiasm. Okay, for something I don't really want to do, but I can say, oh, I'm so excited to do this, right? But it changes my energy.
Yeah.
It changes my energy, and enthusiasm, you see, springs from this deep-seated joy from within.
Yes.
So it's kind of like the match. You know, when you're not feeling joy, light up your enthusiasm.
Yes.
Act as if.
And I know music is a big part of that for me. Like,
for sure.
you know, I have to clean or something. I'm like, but I put on a song, and then it gets that energy going, and that finds that enthusiasm to then be able to sing and dance while I do my chores.
Exactly. You know, and some people, when they're not feeling so good, or they just break up in a relationship, they put on sad stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, my heart is broken, standing in the welfare line of your love, or whatever. You know?
Is that your go-to?
Give me
heartbreak song?
Give me a handout or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So yes, you can choose what music you put on. You can choose what direction you want to go. So without enthusiasm, love for everything either lies dormant or is so weak that we have no love for work or people or life. So use enthusiasm to kick in that joy that's already deep-seated within each and every one of us. Because when we affirm, I am joy, we find all expressions of life effortless. The more joy that I embody, the greater is my strength and desire to give more, to serve more, to discover more, right? To have that curiosity, inquisitive mind. As joy is released, what happens, it's like anything else, it increases. The more you release it, the more it increases, and so does its capacity to expand forever, indefinitely, and infinitely. The greater the rejoicing, the richer joy grows in its quality of giving. And think about this. When we're in tune with joy, we never think about debating our worthiness. We never question that. We're not asking ourselves, am I doing too much? Am I giving too much? Our joy is too busy just being joyous to bother measuring itself for either quantity or quality of expression. You know, I was out the other day walking Grail, my dog, our dog, and I noticed that the buds are coming up, right? Have y'all noticed this? That
Seen
spring?
a few. Yeah.
Yeah, spring is trying to spring, you know. So the buds are beginning to spring forth. And it reminded me to actually take a joy ride or to have the fruit of joy ripen in our lives is to recognize there is, like so many other things, thank you for that acknowledgement, like so many other things, a journey involved in getting there. For example, it takes time, diligence. It takes that P word, patience, and hard work to make a grapevine produce grapes. Think about it. Fruit is not instantaneous because it too has to overcome weather and bugs and weeds and sometimes poor soil and sometimes neglect, just like we neglect ourselves, right? Likewise, in our journey of recognizing joy, we're faced with the waves of apathy, the currents, you might say, of pessimism, the deluge of doubt, and the waterfalls of despair. If we want to see this fruit of joy ripen in our lives, we must open up to Spirit to prune away whatever it is that hinders our joy and then empowers us to make some choices that move us closer to a lifestyle of rejoicing. Right now is an opportunity, and really, which is available to us at any moment, to recognize that we can trust in the divine, not in the circumstances of our lives. How many times do we pray, like I said before, about the things that are going wrong instead of the things that are going right in our lives? I mean, we can affirm that every day. I don't know about you, but when I get into that place of trusting that no matter what's going on in my life, Spirit is right where I am, it brings me comfort and joy.
Yes.
And this is not to dismiss what is happening right now, because there's some stuff going on in our world that is extremely disturbing. What I'm talking about is getting into action and doing what I'm able to do in the moment to help, but also to remember what Khalil Gibran wrote. He wrote this: some of you say joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. Joy and sorrow are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you, remember that the other is asleep on your bed.
Beautiful. Yes. So this week, with joy in your heart, we invite you to explore ways in which you would like to engage in play as a spiritual practice. Seek ways to be silly, to laugh, and to celebrate the unimaginable beauty of life. Ask yourself, are you willing to commit to making time for play this week? Schedule it in. You know, often we schedule in all these things that seem so urgent that play kind of becomes the last thing, right? What if you were to prioritize play as a spiritual practice to then boost that enthusiasm within you so that whatever else you do throughout your day, you greet it from that place and notice if time begins to fly, if you can shift your perspective a bit. And I also invite you to notice right now if you're having any resistance around this idea of play as a spiritual practice. And can you allow yourself to be with those feelings as well without judgment for the next week or so? So meet yourself where you are. Be curious. Notice. And then whether it's frolicking in the grass, admiring the signs of spring that are starting to emerge, or if it's going for a joyride in your own vehicle, ask permission first. Remember to allow joy to rise up within you as you, and most of all, have fun.
Have fun.
Have fun.
I'm going to go home and color.
Good. That sounds great.